Alright, welcome back to the channel. Today I have a knife sent to me by Garrett over there at Bear Forest Knives. And this blade that he sent me is a really neat blade. This is kind of the upper tier of what he's making. It's a very special blade to him. It was actually featured in Knives Illustrated on the front cover. Really cool deal. And so this one's called the Wood Butcher. And you're looking at some specs on the screen there. So go ahead and notice those. One of my favorite attributes, it's 80 CRV2. I really like that steel. Had great experience with that in the past, and his hardness is fantastic. And he told me go ahead, chop away everything I normally do. He has full confidence in this blade, and it's a beefy blade. It's a thick blade, so I'm happy to do so. I was doing some tree dropping around a building, and I had to do a little bit of delimbing. I said, you know what, instead of using the double bit, I actually want to go ahead and use this blade and see how it does. And if you can see limbs like that, a little bigger than thumb thickness, it's just straight through, very clean cuts. I'm very happy with it. I'm not going to destroy the blade because after I'm done with it, it's actually going to go over to Jacob at the Prepper's Bunker and his YouTube channel. And he's got a fantastic YouTube channel, lots of blades and guns and outdoor stuff. Lots of philosophical talk as well, and I know Jacob's a good brother, and so I really want to stress, go subscribe first of all to his channel, and then be watching, because I think he's going to have some similar thoughts, and I'm sure he'll love it as much as I do. It's a great blade. It's definitely a forward weight kind of blade, so chopping, like Garrett told me, he said go ahead and give it some chopping tests, and I did. And so for being a shorter blade, even without a lanyard, I didn't put a lanyard on it, just having that little duck bill on the end of the handle allowed me to get a good grip, never slipped out of my hands, perfectly comfortable. And again, guys, I wear XL size gloves. I did do something I usually try to do. I want to see, is it going to easily dull? And the grind that it has, so it's advertised as a saber grind, and there's a little bit of an edge, maybe like a V edge on top of that, or a convex V. Each guy calls it something different. But there's just some strength on the end of it there, and it really does not dull fast. Looks like those shoulders hold up really well, and obviously I'm slicing through cardboard against the grain and with the grain, no troubles at all, even after using it for at least a few days now. Getting some serious woodwork, and wood can definitely dull a blade quickly, but you know what, cardboard actually dulls a blade really fast. It's almost like sandpaper. There's little grit in there, there's things in there that do seem to affect a blade's edge pretty well. Talking about the sheath is awesome. This thing is immaculate, actually. It's quite the sheath. So you can see here, I can draw from the sitting position and return it to the sheath, and it's super comfortable. Like, I'm not stressing out here, I'm not having a hard time, I'm not worried that it's going to poke out of the sheath in any sort of way. This is really an Excalibur sheath. This is quite impressive. I think your sheath making skills, Garrett, are on par with your blade making skills. This is really cool. So this one has kind of like a Cordura type, nylon type loop there, and so when you have an expensive, high quality custom blade like this, sometimes you don't want a cheap, clip, quite frankly, on it. You want something like this where it's never going to leave your belt, it's not going to fall off, you're not going to lose this thing in the woods. And I did hip carry this on the last few trips that I've taken it on, and it stayed right there. It's very comfortable, but it has enough flexibility because of that nylon that it's easy to draw from different positions. I appreciate that. The sheath itself is very high quality. Again, the design is great. It's easy to use your thumb on that kind of modified double loop thumb ramp there, and it can either break up or straight out. And the impressive thing is it goes straight back in each time with no trouble. I have not once had trouble with that. It retains really well, obviously upside down with all that weight, and just right back out. This is a really, really interesting sheath design because it works so well and it's so natural depending on the sitting position, standing position, kneeling. I haven't had any issues drawing the knife out of there or returning it to the sheath. It is so smooth. Now with a blade of this thickness and this design, obviously it just blows wood apart. If you're going to baton with it, if you choose to do something like that, obviously this blade is built pretty well for it. Saber grinds may or may not be your favorite for batoning. I don't do a whole lot of batoning. It's just for the necessary bits here and there, and it's usually just a small amount like what you see here. Obviously it's going to handle that no problems. It helps that it has a stock thickness of 0.187, so that's a really good stock thickness there. Did a little bit of carving and whittling with it, as you would expect. A blade called the Wood Butcher, I'm gonna do a lot of woodwork with it, and Garrett knows that, and so he knew this was kind of in my wheelhouse, in my vein of thinking and blade use. And so that edge type you know, it's not really for like a lot of whittling. I think the strength of the edge is more in chopping and aggressive use, but I can still get a lot of material removed. If you can see those big flakes and chunks coming off the blade, it's not that difficult for me. It does have a pretty decent bite, and I want to try to show you that I'm actually getting a lot of control on the blade, even though it's not the type of handle that you would maybe have on a whittling knife per se. Obviously a chopping knife and a whittling knife are going to have a different handle. I'm still getting quite a bite out of there, and if you're going to make tent stakes or use it in a camping scenario, you're just messing around with your friends, setting up a tarp, that's one way I like to not bring stakes when I set up a tarp out in the woods. I'll just carve them when I'm out there, try to keep it lightweight. This obviously is going to do the trick just fine. I can get control, I can choke up on it, I can get real close to the edge in multiple ways, and this knife actually lends to different types of holds as well. I'm going to show you a little bit of that in the future, but making your notches easily, and check out the chopping capability of this thing. I mean, that thing could take a limb off if you really put some power behind it. It really chops well, and so the Wood Butcher is an excellent title. In fact, this thing makes me think of that Leonardo DiCaprio movie, I can't remember what it's called, about knife fighting and that kind of thing. It was a pretty cool blade. So here's a little look at the contours. Now he's put a lot of time into this handle. This is not just a real simple handle. This is something I think he takes a lot of pride in what he's putting together here. Because like I said, this is near the top of what he produces right now. It is kind of the very special blade. I think when you go on his website, it's featured. Again, it was in Knives Illustrated. Right on the cover there, it's a really cool design. I like that black oxide, and I think he called it rock tumble finish. It's kind of got a patina on it, it appears. And it's held up well, and all the use I put it through so far, no issues at all. I do like that handle design for chopping especially. Again, it's not a wood carver per se. It's not maybe built to be a wood carver in that sense. It's trying to do many things well. That's my takeaway with it, is this knife can do a lot of stuff real well, but it perhaps isn't built to only do one thing well. Whereas some of my Mora knives that are specific carving knives, that's kind of the only thing they do well. They don't do other tasks super well. This one is trying to do many things well, and it did. I really enjoyed it. I was able to choke up on it quite high, as you can see there, comfortably, and then back a little bit. That's more of a standard grip, and take a look how thick that tang is. I mean, that's a serious piece of 80 CRV2. That's not cheap to produce. So with a big blade, I actually prefer big blades when I'm feather sticking because of this method. I like using the knee method. I like doing the draw strokes. If I'm going to do really fine curls, especially long curly curls like this, the knee method is a really cool way to do it. And with really short blades, I usually can't quite get the angle right on this because of that clip style design, that drop clip, whatever you want to call that thing. Whatever it is, it works great. And so I can just pull the material back towards myself, and I'm getting really nice curls. And I could do thicker curls if I wanted to, but just making something a little flowery here, something that would actually catch sparks really good in the winter time, which I do use a feather stick and a fire steel in the winter time very often. Now look how wide that blade is. It's really an impressive wide blade. I like being able to grab it in different ways, kind of like what you're seeing right here. So I'm choking up on it, grabbing it, and I'm perfectly safe. Trust me, this has never cut me once. My palm will stop me from hitting my chest, and I'm not holding onto the edge of the blade, so it's quite safe. But it works really well to draw on it, and it's kind of a traditional, almost feels like using an ulu knife. Just pulling those strokes in, and when you're spoon carving, this is a very common hold that you would have. Maybe not on the blade itself, but the direction and the style of cut when you're working on the stem of a spoon, just like that. Alright, so I'm not going to advise anybody else to do this. I'm pretty good at giving things a toss at this point. I do have a lot of practice, and so I took it over to my throwing post, and first stick right away is actually balanced really well to do that. And so if you kind of know how many paces you should stand, yeah, that thing throws really well. Just did one just to prove that it's passing the balance test, as some of our other YouTube friends call it. Chest lever, relatively comfortable. I wouldn't say the handle is built for chest lever by any means, but it was relatively comfortable. The standard hold here, kind of a hammer hold. Yeah, kind of the tool grip there. You can definitely bite in deep with both thumbs. There's a lot of real estate there, and it's thick. You know, it's a thick spine, not difficult. If you're going to do some carving with it, you can get real close because the edge comes all the way back to where those scales start. You can get very close and get a lot of power and articulation and control over your blade, even though it's a large blade that is thick, and it is blade heavy, of course. Edge seems to be holding up just fine, no issues whatsoever. I meticulously looked it over, and although the edge will dull, because all edge is dull, I didn't get any chips, anything like that. Just noticeable that it dulled a little bit. When it came, it was razor sharp, super sharp, very acceptable. And now, yeah, it's dulled a little bit. So here's another method. If you're going to do some bow drills, you don't have to have a spear point design in order to do that. In fact, this design works exceptionally well. I can grab real close on the blade because of that broadness of the blade. It gives me lots of real estate to hold on to. If you're going to make a bow drill set, here's a technique right here with that clip style point. And just for fun, I always like to chop it off at the end just because I'm so impressed at how well this thing chops. For being a shorter blade, it is a wood butcher. It chops really well. Love that emblem, the bear on there. This is a USA made blade, guys. I'm just so impressed with it. It does super well. It feels like a custom in hand. And all of his specs are pretty tight to what he advertises on the website. Of course, with customs, you always want to give them a little room for error or change, but this one is very much so on top of the specs that I read online.